Tesla will solve full self-driving before anyone else. Here's why.
So to incrementally adjust this one feature, this is just one of many, many features. They added a training set that's probably bigger than every single labeled vision training set that has ever been compiled, like maybe 100 times bigger. Like 1 million images is considered a really big labeled training set, a huge labeled training set. And they're just doing an incremental adjustment to a feature, and they're adding up 1.5 billion images to it. It's just, the scale is nuts.
Elon Musk then commented, our video clips are usually shorter than 30 seconds, but the overall point made by James is accurate. Tesla is probably labeling more images per week than any other project ever done, and our rate of labeling is increasing rapidly. I want to emphasize this specific point. More images per week than any other project ever done that Tesla is labeling. That is a lot. So when you think about that, well, what does that mean? That means Tesla has the biggest data advantage by far. And that is why I believe Tesla stock will 10x by 2030. And that's why I sold all of my S&P 500 and I put that into Tesla stock.
Yes, the world's best self-driving. Yes. To me, right now, this seems game, set, match. I don't want to be complacent or overconfident, but that's what it appears. That is just literally how it appears right now. I could be wrong, but it appears to be the case that Tesla is vastly ahead of everyone.
Now, this clip is from 3 years ago, but it still remains true today just as much as it was back in 2019. But let's dig into this just a little bit deeper.
Something properly. So what Elon's saying here is not only is Tesla labeling more stuff than anybody else right now and probably ever in history, they're actually increasing that lead. So they're getting better and better and better at it. So over time, they're going to be able to auto label more and more and more elements. All of this is just fantastic news for full self-driving. What it ultimately means is that they're going to be able to focus data on every single edge case that they need to over time, because even if it only happens 1 out of every 100,000 miles or something, you've got so many cars on the road collecting data that you're able to get a reasonable data set. And of course, they have a simulation engine if they need to use that as well, but they're collecting massive amounts of data that nobody else can have access to. And this is the reason why Tesla basically has to win full self-driving. If it's possible for full self-driving to be solved, Tesla's going to be the one that does it. Now, there's not any guarantee. It's possible that full self-driving, that autonomous driving, is just too difficult a problem to solve completely. I don't believe that that's the case, but if anybody is going to be able to do it, Tesla's going to be able to do it, unless they're just completely wrong in how they're working on the whole thing. I don't think that's the case, but their data lead is so massive and their auto labeling lead is so massive that nobody else can catch up, because basically they have this gigantic lead and they're increasing that lead over time. So in brief,
that's why I think and believe very deeply that Tesla will solve full self-driving first. Did you hear that? Tesla has to win full self-driving based on all the data that they have. Because edge cases, that is extremely difficult to solve for those. So you need to collect edge cases. You have to keep chasing the lines. But if you don't have enough data, how can you solve most of the edge cases? You just want to know that there is such a case where somehow an elephant drops from the sky. Who would have thought about that? Or who would have thought that a bumper sticker could have a stop sign on there and then the car thinks, oh, it's a stop sign? These are very silly examples, but there are a lot of those in reality. Now, I hear you. You're saying competition is coming. How about Waymo, Cruise, and all the other ones? And we look at this chart, and this, by the way, is from 2021. So things must have gotten a little bit better since then. And you can see that Waymo here, we have one disengagement for every 29,000 miles. And Cruise is pretty similar, 28,000 miles. So even though we used lidar and AG maps and all of that, that is still very impressive, you would think, right? This Vox.com article says Waymo's hardware is much more robust than Tesla's. All right, whatever. We use lidar, and I will talk about that a little bit more in just a few moments. There's one interesting thing that you gotta know about lidar, and I will make more videos, so subscribe for those. It uses several redundant sensor systems, including lidar, radar, and cameras, to create a real-time picture of where it's operating. The company also maps areas ahead of time by having human drivers manually drive the vehicles through them. And I have one shocking moment coming up in just a few moments, but I need to show you this first, and it will all make a lot more sense then. So you gotta understand the cost of lidar. Now, this is from a few years ago, but still, it's very similar. It has gotten a little bit better, but it's still pretty bad. So cost of lidar is, of course, the major concern. Whether we implement these radars in their taxi network or we decide to sell these vehicles to the public, the cost is going to be huge. For example, the retail price of Chrysler hybrid minivan that they are using, which the company uses for autonomous conversion, is $40,000. Now, add the cost of lidar sensors, which is around $7,500 per sensor, plus the computer system and all the rest of the tech needed for the conversion, the end price would be over $100,000. It has gotten a little bit better, but it's expensive. That's the point. But you just watch this, take a look. Waymo's hardware is much more... Sorry, I just can't read this one because when you take into consideration the cost, I don't know if you can say that it is much more robust. But this is not the point. Here's the shocker. Employees must determine whether a disengagement was caused by a safety issue, which is a subjective decision. For example, Cruise decided that running a red light was not a justification for acting for safety reasons. Now, with that in mind, what do you think about these numbers that you see here? Cruise says they have one disengagement for every 28,000 miles driven. Of course, there's not going to be a single red light in one of those disengagements. Even with lidar. So one point to take away is whatever numbers you see here is, we know we cannot trust those numbers. Definitely, for sure, we cannot trust those numbers just because of that one simple statement that I just read out to you. How can you not say that running a red light is not a safety concern? I just saw a traffic accident almost happen where two cars came to a complete stop while they were going through a red light. And I was like, whoa, that could have been me. This guy was about to run a red light, and he sort of did. The car that stopped was the car that was going through a green light, and the car that was running through a red light just stopped in the middle of the intersection. Maybe for that instance it would have been safer to keep going, because if that car did not stop, the one that was going through the green light, in time, that would have been an accident. That was a pretty bad moment. So how many moments like that does Cruise and Waymo have? How many? Oh, and I know the best, I know how much data they have. Look at this, how many miles they drove. Now keep in mind this is December 2019 to November 2020. Of course, it's a little bit better now, but is it really that much more better? 628,000 miles that Waymo has driven. Cruise, 770,000 miles. Now, how about Tesla? How about billions of miles? So why do these other companies still keep using lidar? Let's get into this. Now, in a few days, or in the near future, I will release a video about why Tesla, actually, there's a very good chance, a very good reason to believe that Tesla right now is actually not constrained by battery supplies. Which, if that is true, that could mean that the year-to-year deliveries and growth of production could exceed 50%, maybe, possibly. I'll make a video about that. So if you're interested, definitely subscribe. Now let's get into why do we still use lidar? James actually answered this question pretty well on Dave Lee on Investing YouTube channel. Let's dive into this.
Vision is definitely going to get to a point where lidar is not going to add enough value to justify its cost. So I also worked in nonlinear optics for a long time. I used to design transceivers, and I worked at a company. We had the biggest gallium arsenide fab, and we made all these in-fi lasers and stuff. And so I got to watch a lot of nonlinear optics development over the years. And it's not super easy. And I'm not really expecting lidars to get cheap as fast as lidar proponents think it's going to. Now, if you think lidar is going to get really good and really cheap really fast, then that could change the equation. But like my guess is that that's not going to happen very quickly. As long as it's not super cheap and super good, then it has to be supplying a lot of benefit on top of your vision in order to justify putting it in vehicles. And I don't think it's going to justify that, at some point. Which I think is, like, if I'm going to guess, I'm going to say it's pretty close. I'd be surprised personally if 10 years from now, people were developing new systems and that were cost sensitive and putting lidar in them. If you have the resources to do the software development to make the vision good, and your end system is cost sensitive, then I think you won't be putting lidar in. But people who they build a piece of factory automation, they're not going to get a lot of data, and it's already $100,000 robot, and then maybe they'll put a $10,000 lidar on it, and it will totally make sense because you'll get the benefit out of that. It'll make sense from a cost standpoint, but I don't think it'll make sense in cars relatively soon. But I don't expect the people who are doing that to say, "Oh yeah, we were wrong. We're going to take the lidars off the car." Like, you're not going to see that happen.
Yeah.
And you have to have good vision to drive. You just have to. You can't have poor vision and feel like you're going to do well. You're going to do reasonably well. The thing is, if you have good vision, then lidar doesn't add anything, right? Lidar it gives you something to the extent that your vision isn't very good. But where is that line where your vision is good enough to drive a car if you have lidar, but it's not good enough to drive a car if you don't have lidar, right? Like, there's that little spot. And people who are putting lidar on cars, they're gambling, they're betting that that's where the world is going to end up for a really long time, that we're going to be in that gap where lidar adds a lot of value, but vision is good enough to drive as long as you have lidar. You have to have good vision, and you have to have really good vision to drive in the world.
I mean,
so here you go. That's perhaps the main reason why they are using lidar. Now, one of the cons of using lidar is it can see the shapes of objects very easily. So, for example, you can see that there's a road sign that's a triangular, or you can see a stop sign because of its shape, but it cannot read what is written on the stop sign. So, for example, there are some signs, and this is not a common, but there are some stop signs that say stop, but only if you turn left. So if you want to turn right, you don't need to stop. Now, lidar would not be able to read what is on that sign. It can only see the shape of the sign. So that would be an issue. So that's why we always still have to have cameras. And they are betting that this gap between camera vision and lidar vision that the gap of how good camera vision is going to stay fairly big for a very long time. Because if it only stays big for a short period of time, it makes no sense to spend so much money on lidar, spend all that money on research. You might as well just focus on camera vision. Here's another interesting chart where people are warming up to self-driving cars. Now, one thing that sort of stood out here is that in China, people are much more confident than in any other place, although in 2018 and 19, it went lower, and then in 2020, it jumped up, but still is lower than in other countries, which lower means that people are more confident that fully self-driving vehicles will be safe and that they will actually become a reality, just an interesting chart to look at. And another interesting chart, which if you want to laugh, just take a look at this one again. And yeah, this should be try not to laugh challenge. Only people that can understand full self-driving should look at this and that understand Tesla. Then it would be a pretty good try not to laugh challenge. And of course, this statement just kills me. The one where cruise employees think that going through a red light is not a safety-based intervention if you stop a car from not going through a red light. Yeah, it's a good thing that I'm not in that car because that could literally kill me, right? Now, this reminds me a little bit of a video that I just did about Mercedes beating Tesla to level 3 full self-driving autonomy, which is a little bit ridiculous. You should watch that video. If you want to laugh, that's a good one to watch. Basically, Mercedes says that you can let the car drive itself fully on a highway in Germany, which is Autobahn, where the cars have no speed limits, by the way, and cars go 100 miles an hour. That's pretty common. But the Mercedes system, level 3 full self-driving system, where you don't have to pay attention to the road, it only works if you drive at 37 miles an hour. Why? Because Mercedes believes in safety, I guess? I thought that was pretty funny. You should definitely watch that one. That's a good video if you haven't seen that one. If it's your first time watching this channel, my name is Matt Postis. I'm a serial millionaire, entrepreneur, and investor. My net worth is over $20 million. The only stock that I own out of all the publicly traded stocks you can buy on a stock exchange is Tesla. Of course, I have other assets, private companies, and real estate and other things. But in terms of stocks that you can buy on a stock exchange, Tesla is the only one that I own. Why? Because I believe Tesla will solve full self-driving before everyone else, and that's why I believe Tesla stock will reach at least $10,000 in price by 2030. Subscribe if you haven't already, hit the like button, and in one of the upcoming videos I will cover a little bit about batteries, why it's so special, what Tesla is doing with 4680 batteries, and also the reason why I believe Tesla maybe is not battery constrained going forward, which would be a big game changer that could perhaps even exceed the 50% year-over-year growth of vehicles. So definitely subscribe for that one. That video is going to be coming out sometime soon. And if you haven't watched the video why I think Tesla stock will double in the next 12 months, watch that one. That's a pretty good one. And if you haven't seen my video about why I think Tesla is a safe long-term investment, not financial advice, watch the other video. The reason why I say it's not financial advice is because it's comical advice. And the reason why it's comical is because, but I follow my own advice for making money and investing. Every time I look at my bank account, I laugh. That's why it's comical. Right? So, see you in the next video. Remember to hit the like button if you'd like to see more videos. That helps spread the video to the YouTube algorithm. Gives it a little bit boost. Thank you for that.